Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. While Donald Trump's America First policy might reap benefits in certain sectors, it might result in the US losing out in others, especially the IT sector, in which it is a leader globally. In the first few weeks of his presidency, Donald Trump has suggested changes to America's immigration policy. This includes the H1B Visa, which the IT sector uses to send thousands of highly skilled professionals to America every year. Top industry analysts in India, however, say that changes made to H1B visas are not a good thing for the US, as it may lose its edge over others in the IT race. India and the United States share a strong economic relationship, and America's IT sector is fueled largely by the Indian IT professionals. In India, both industry and experts as well as engineering students feel that changes to the H1B visa will affect both the countries. While Indian IT professionals and students, after their plans, America might have a lot more to lose. Now, in this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze if Indian IT companies can survive the Trump scare. Joining me on the program today are Raymond Vickery, a leading author and advisor on US-India relations and a former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Trade Development. S.K Sarkar, Executive Member, Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, and K Arun, Editor, Opinion, Economic Times. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Raymond Vickery, I'd like to start with you, of course. How serious do you think that, the executive order on the H1B visa is, and, is it really going to happen in the near future? Because Trump has so far delivered on several of his campaign promises.
Well, Frank, I think it's very serious in the sense that everybody was saying about President Trump, well, he's saying these things for effect in regard to the campaign. Unfortunately, since he's been sworn in as president, he's done exactly what he says he's going to do. And one of the first points in the inaugural speech was buy American, hire American. You mentioned the fact, and it is a fact, that the United States needs to have a strong relationship with India on IT. I'm here this week for the World Energy Policy Summit, and we're working on energy cooperation. But IT is every bit as important. Most people don't realize that in the software business, it's like a car. There are parts that come from everywhere in order to make up really the saleable and the useful product. And a lot of that is coming from India. That having been said, it seems to me it's exactly the wrong approach for India to take, that the United States needs India more than India needs the United States.
Is that not the case then?
That is not the case, and unfortunately that's the kind of thing that really grates on people in Congress and the constituents of Donald Trump. So there needs to be a more comprehensive approach to be able to do education about this, rather than just saying, well, it's all going to work out, because unless we all work together, it's not going to work out, and there are going to be serious consequences to both sides.
S.K. Sarkar, what's the comprehensive approach that we have to take up in the near future so as to ensure that there is no problem somewhere down the line?
Well, I don't really think there's a scare as such, because Donald Trump may say whatever he wants to say, but he hasn't reduced the number of H1 visas at all. And that's 65,000. And then there is another 20,000 which comes in, because if you have studied, if you've done your post-graduation course from the American universities. And plus, if you also add on, there's a cap exempt for the universities, the American universities as such. So it's, if you were to combine all these factors, and if you look at the free trade agreements which America has with, let's say, with Chile and with Singapore, where they can bring in about 1,400 extra, Chile can bring in 1,400 extra visa holders, Singapore has the right to about 5,400. So I think India only has to negotiate and try, and since India is such a dominant player in this particular category of H1B visas, so all they have to do is, I think they need to be a little more proactive and try and get as many visas as is possible for India. But we must also understand that what has been happening, and which maybe Mr. Donald Trump is partly right there also, that this H1B visas was actually meant for very high-skilled workers. It wasn't meant for, so there was some kind of body shopping which happened all over the world, and which which was taken advantage by the emerging nations by itself. So that's something which needs to be guarded against. And as far as I think high skills are concerned, if I'm a skilled person, I think I'll be accepted. So that's as simple as that. So if I have the talent, the skill, why should anybody reject me? So that's that kind of a situation. I don't think it's really a scare by itself. But things are going to be a little more difficult. Yes, I agree with that. But we will obviously have now people coming in who will be more quality kind of people, and which America will definitely benefit. America, I will always say, cannot ignore Indian software engineers by any chance.
Indeed. K Arun, are you happy with that assessment that the highly skilled workforce doesn't really have to worry at the moment, because highly skilled jobs are still going to be created, and it's the Indians who are likely to land some of those jobs?
See, highly skilled jobs will be required, but they don't necessarily have to be deployed in the US. So visas ultimately is about entering the US. So it's not necessary that every highly skilled job, every skilled IT professional be located in the US. So if Trump is very serious, very determined to keep our foreign IT workers, then what will happen is that a whole lot of IT work will be shipped out of the US and will be done in other locations where people are available. The fact of the matter is that the demographic who studies engineering, that is most plentifully available in India, more than in any other country in the world. Now they will learn engineering, they are willing to work in IT at various levels of skill and excellence. Now this profile will change. These engineers will be utilized, their talents will be utilized, their skills will be utilized, but instead of being deployed in the US, they might be deployed in India itself, or they might be deployed in Europe or in some other Latin America or wherever. So all that will change is the location of where these people are actually deployed to do the job that they are required to do. That their job opportunities might not be particularly at risk. The second thing that will happen is that this kind of a churning of the business model might also induce some value upgradation in India. The kind of things that Indian IT industry does might undergo a change, and they might actually produce more value per worker and do higher end work, which is not such a bad thing.
So would you say then that the US stands to lose in such kind of a situation?
Plus the US, I think the IT companies that do most of the work are American companies. They themselves will continue to do the work, but instead of doing that work in the US, they might actually do it in Canada, or they might do it in India, or they might do it in some other location.
So you're not saying it in as many words, but the business might just come out of the US as far as the Americans are concerned.
But the American companies might still continue to dominate those sectors.
Sure. Yes.
I just wanted to make a point over here. If you look at the fiscal deficit of the US government, it's very large. But it gets a little compressed because of the invisibles. The invisibles, by invisibles I mean education services, I mean the IT-enabled services, and whatever is connected with IT. Now, when these companies, as Mr. Arun is saying, when they move out of America, now America stands to lose a great deal over there. So their fiscal deficit could go up by leaps and bounds. If that happens, and America, fortunately, is fairly business-minded, a business-minded nation. So I don't think they would allow that. And so when it comes to the ultimate step, I don't think the U.S. administration, led by Donald Trump, will take such a drastic step.
Indeed. Taking the discussion forward, Raymond, as far as the phone call between Trump and Prime Minister Modi was concerned, it went off very well, unlike some of the other telephonic calls that Donald Trump had with some of the other
Australia.
Yeah.
Who can fight with the Australians?
So the telephonic conversation went on very well between the two countries, between the two heads of states. But do you believe that the visa issue could be a thorn in the flesh somewhere down the line?
Well, there's good news and bad news on this, Frank. The good news is that there is strong support for U.S.-India relations in IT, strong support for U.S.-India relations across the board, and Donald Trump participates in that. During the campaign, he had Indian Americans, not many of them, but some who were in favor of him. He said good things about India. He didn't get it always right. He tried to speak Hindi. It didn't quite work out. But there was that, and the initial phone call, as you say, with Prime Minister Modi went well. And that's all to the good. But I would caution anybody who's thinking about this not to be too rational about it. Because one thing that's happened in regard to President Trump is by his method of campaigning and the way he's conducted himself and policy in the first 2 or 3 weeks, he has loosed a lot of irrational feelings about foreigners, about immigrants, about people who are different than we are. During the campaign, he went to Florida, where supposedly workers for the Disney Corporation had been made to train their own replacements. Well, it wasn't exactly that way, but to hear it said, you would have thought that these folks were held for ransom, hung on the square kind of a situation. Now, people have kept saying, look, when he's in president, there are things which are going to constrain him and temper that. Well, he's made it plain that he's going to blow some things up, and he's going to do that. And so I would encourage folks in India to think broadly about this and not completely rationally, but think in terms of the deal. If you look at his book, The Art of the Deal, that seems to be the president's orientation on it. And there is a great deal to be made here because, as you say, we need India, India needs us in the IT area. But just saying it doesn't make it come true. And it's going to take a lot of work by Prime Minister Modi, by people in the United States who understand what the situation is. Already, I think we've had 96 different companies sign a petition against the way in which the immigrant ban has been implemented. And so it's going to take that kind of effort. Otherwise, these things can spiral out of control, and the law of unintended consequences can come into play to hurt both sides.
Sure. Yes, you wanted to make a point.
From the Indian point of view, there is a silver lining. If you look at the budget, the recent budget which was presented, I think one of the best things which happened in this budget was scrapping of FIPB, Foreign Investment Promotion Board. Now, once that happens, there's a lot of foreign capital, hopefully, should come into India. Once that happens, and India is right now is right on the starting block, and it can definitely take off, provided that the capital support does come in, which is quite likely. We have been, my small complaint against the Indian IT sector always has been that they've been pretty slow off the blocks. They haven't graduated from, they haven't graduated as fast as they should have from body shopping or from being backroom boys to higher things. So that thing could change, and we could have a Silicon Valley in this country, and which is quite a possibility because we have the human resources in India, as in the IT sector, who are very well equipped to take it forward. But yes, we do lack the capital, and the ambience has to still be built up. We do not have everything, the wherewithal which we need. But once this capital starts coming in, I think the thinking will change, and I think India may look a little inward. And even if it does, there are a lot of things which can happen in India. Even if you look at GST. Now, there are 111 points of taxation. Now, that's a huge challenge for the companies which will be embracing GST. Now, the IT industry can definitely do a lot of work over there. If you look at the debit cards, you have 700 million debit cards in India.
Sure.
If you look at your small-scale industries, small and micro industries, there are 580 million units over here. And yet, the locations which accept them is just 1.44 million. So look at the scope. I mean, I'm just talking about debit cards. This can spread around to the credit cards and also all the payments that we, digital payments that we can do. Indeed. So Digital India, yes, it has to get a leg up, and it should.
Indeed. Okay. taking the discussion forward, Arun, this is something that the IT companies have been preparing for, because even Democrats in the past have been against the H1B visas and have said that, laws need to be passed, whereas, the American jobs stay within America. So do you believe the Indian IT companies have insulated themselves and are far better prepared to deal with the situation now?
Indians culturally do things when they are pushed against the wall. They don't really prepare far in advance. And even IT industry in the US is not prepared to actually do without the steady flow of talent that they have been used to in the past. If you look at, as he said, all American IT companies have protested against the ban and policies that will insulate the US from flow of talent. Some of them have gone to court. Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, was on the streets protesting against the immigration ban. So pressure will come on the US administration through the IT industry and its influence on on Congress, which will be substantial. If you remember, Barack Obama, when he initially took office, also complained about the mangaloring of jobs in the US. But over time, as the IT industry made its presence felt, and the simple logic of the industry requiring brain power was made to, sort of make its way, that logic made its way through the congressional process, and the president and the administration understood it, those restrictions actually went away. A similar thing might happen in this case also, or it might not. If it does not, as I said, it doesn't mean that the end of IT. IT is going to have a boom, which will continue. We are going to see robotics, artificial intelligence, and all these things coming, the Internet of Things, and the related big data analytics, all of which requires a fair degree of advanced cognitive processing capabilities, and that requires training in engineering and other quantitative fields, which I said, which is very important to understand. The maximum number of people who train in these fields is from India.
Sure.
Just because the largest number of young people who can actually train in these areas are from India. So they will be tapped, their talents will be utilized. Whether in India or outside India, it's a matter of, how things shape up.
Sure.
So there is no reason to be exceedingly alarmed about the prospects of Indian IT industry or of the American IT industry. It's a question of, the IT industry is truly globalized. They operate across the world. Some might complain that there has been a carnage of Americans till now. But the fact is that the American IT industry dominates the world like nothing else. American finance companies, banks, they dominate the world as nothing else. So all these depend upon very many structures of the way the US world economy is organized, continuing to operate. If he doesn't get it, then he will be thrown out.
Indeed.
If he gets it, what's the worry?
Indeed. We spoke about globalization. Arun spoke about globalization. S.K Sarkar spoke about, looking inward. At a time when, globalization is the theme, globalization is what everyone's talking about, is it right to be protectionist or look at protectionism and not look at globalization and look within rather than looking outward and building these trade barriers? Is that the right way forward?
Of course not. But I want to pick up on a point Mr. Sarkar made about the Foreign Investment Promotion Board. I agree wholeheartedly. That's one of the best things that's been done is to abolish it, because it wasn't the Foreign Investment Promotion Board. It was the Foreign Investment Prohibition Board. You had to have, it was a remnant of the license Raj, and that just indicates to me that India is looking forward in the kind of globalized economy which we have. But I want to caution you again, Mr. Trump got elected in spite of having investments here in India. He has several real estate projects, which he still owns, by the way, because he's turned the business over to children, but he hasn't relinquished any ownership rights in any of this. This is a new ball game. We haven't had a president who has ever stood up and in his inaugural address said, America first, Buy America, High America, and we are going to put America first by protection. And that's what he said. So this is an entirely different approach, and it is too early to say, well, this is just a matter of campaign talk carried over for a little while. I go back to my point earlier. India has the message, abolishing FIPB, looking to a global value chain. The United States has led in that, but there is a core constituency which President Trump has tapped into that rejects all of that. In the small towns, in the rural areas, who feel that they've been left out. Not necessarily, the figures don't necessarily show that they've been left out. But as we all know, in politics, perception and feelings are often reality as opposed to the facts of the situation. So that's what we have to deal with. That's what's on the table. Those of us who know and love India, know and love the U.S.-India relationship, are going to work hard on it. But it's not going to be enough for India just to say, hey, you guys need us more than we need you. It's going to happen anyway, and don't worry about it. Because that ain't going to work with President Trump, in my candid opinion.
Indeed, indeed. But President Trump also needs to realize one thing, Arun, that, the unemployment rate, like you pointed out in an earlier program on the big picture, is just 2% in the IT sector in the U.S. So if Indians are not there, so then there are two options. Either you leave these posts vacant, or, you don't give it to Indians. What's the way forward then?
Obviously, you have to get these people in. Otherwise, the job will be shipped out of the U.S. But let me say one thing. There is this generalized feeling that in large swathes of the West, the sentiment is against globalization. This is thanks to Brexit and then this Trump's election. But let's also understand that young people in these countries are, by and large, in favor of globalization. They see their future, their jobs, their prosperity coming from the globalized economy and being able to find a role in that globalized economy. And sadly, they are not being politically as active, as vocal, and as participative as the earlier generation, which nourishes a grievance about their lives having been changed by the globalized process. But thanks to Trump's election, thanks to Brexit and the consequences, a whole lot of people who earlier were sort of had disdain for politics are now actually getting politicized. They are turning up in campaigns, they are turning up in rallies, they are taking part in online signature campaigns, and I'm sure their political participation and engagement will have its effect. So I don't think it's a foregone case that the West will turn against globalization, because the biggest gainers in this entire globalization process, it's not a zero-sum game. Everybody has gained. But the American banks and American IT industry and American entrepreneurs have gained more than anybody else in this world.
Sure.
And why would they forsake that gain? So it is in their interest. It is in the interest of people in India, in China, in Southeast Asia, across the world, also to be part of the globalized economy. And that logic will, I think, finally sink in. And if more people actually participate in the politics that decides whether this globalized economy will continue or not, then things will be fine.
I'd like to get quick final closing comments from all my guests, starting with you, Mr. Sarkar. Do you believe that, it's time that Indian IT companies, did a major rethink as far as their business models are concerned?
The Indian IT industry is a 150 billion industry. It employs directly and indirectly 37.3 million people. This is an industry which you cannot wish away. This industry has to exist. It has a lot of experience. It has a lot of exposure. It understands this industry very well. Why I said that India may have to look inwards is not because I am advocating that India should become anti-global. The reason is that we need to build our own infrastructure also, the IT infrastructure. And once that happens, India would be a much bigger player than what it is today. We need to get into the IPRs, which we are not doing as at present, which we should be doing a little more aggressively. So once that happens, I think the Indian industry, Indian IT industry, has a lot to give to the world, and of course to my own country.
Indeed. Raymond, what's the way forward, do you believe, between India and the US as far as the IT sector is concerned?
Well, the way forward is a concerted effort on both sides, U.S. and Indian, against this mindset that somehow we can both grow if we'll only make in America or only make in India. You know, India tried socialism in one country. It's been shown that closed borders are not the way to prosperity. They are the way to poverty. But that message has not gotten through to very large segments of the population, both in India and the United States. We need to link this up with jobs, and good jobs, and why it's in the best interest. And we can't just assume that the logic of the matter is going to be assessed in an intelligent and dispassionate way. And that is the message in terms of dealing with the new situation with President Trump.
Sure. Arun, close the show for us with your closing
So I think it is an occasion for Indian IT industry to step up their entrepreneurial imagination. I do not agree that capital shortage has been the issue. The issue is daring and entrepreneurship and imagination to think big. Our Indian IT industry doesn't hire many PhDs. So many people don't go for a PhD. Why not? So when we move to an era of robotics and advanced materials and artificial intelligence, we need to have people who are PhDs. It's not enough to just be able to code. These kind of jobs will just disappear. So this is probably might be what is called a Uroshi Shapam, which becomes indirectly a boon. It's a curse, but it's actually a boon. It's a time for the IT industry to up the game and move up the value chain substantially.
Sure. You know, one quick comment, Raymond, from you, because there are a lot of students who watch our program. Is it, high time that students did a major rethink as far as their future is concerned?
No, I don't think that you should shy away from the United States. The United States is the place where there's innovation going on. Many of these things which are said about what India needs to do in moving up the value chain, the United States has already done it. So it's in the interest of a student to get the best exposure he can or she can to that kind of culture and that kind of approach. And where you use that education, that experience, whether it's in India or whether it's in India and some other place, then you can do that. But unless you go see it and take full advantage of it, you're not going to be preparing yourself in the best possible way.
You can't ignore a $17 trillion economy.
Okay, fine. On that note, we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Raymond, Vickery, S.K Sarkar, K Arun, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on The Big Picture and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. See you again next time.